Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Iran's president and foreign minister reportedly killed in a helicopter crash. A frantic overnight search in blizzard conditions ends with no survivors.
Iran says rescue teams were transporting bodies away from the wreckage today. State media says the crash killed 9 people in total.
President Biden venturing onto a college campus after months of nationwide protests. What Biden told graduates at Morehouse College as he's losing support among black voters.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in Israel to press for restraint in Rafah, a plan to have Saudi Arabia help govern Gaza, the latest from the Israel-Hamas war.
New Taiwanese President William Lai asking China to stop its military and political threats. This during his inauguration speech today.
Rapper Sean Diddy Combs admits in a video to assaulting his ex-girlfriend. That follows a newly surfaced video showing what appears to be Combs attacking his ex.
After a 2-year pause, Blue Origin is back in the space tourism business. It launched a crew of 6 into space yesterday, including a 90-year-old former astronaut candidate.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Welcome. Today is Monday, May 20th, and we're starting with breaking news overnight. Iranian state media says Iran's president and foreign minister are dead after a helicopter crash.
Rescue crews found the wreckage early today after an overnight search in blizzard conditions.
Iranian officials say the helicopter ran into heavy fog and went down near Azerbaijan.
The Iranian Red Crescent says search and rescue efforts have now ended, with teams transporting the bodies.
The Iranian regime expressed condolences, saying there will not be the slightest disturbance in the wake of the crash.
Keep in mind that Iran's supreme leader has more power than the country's president. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on what we know so far about the crash.
9 people, including Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi and his foreign minister, were in a helicopter that crashed in northwest Iran on Sunday. Iran's state media says the deadly crash happened after a dam opening ceremony on the border with Azerbaijan. State TV said images from the crash site showed the helicopter hit a mountain peak, but there was no official word on the cause of the crash. The Iranian Red Crescent says crews were transporting bodies to the city of Tabriz. Analysts say it was a U.S.-made helicopter from the late 1960s that went down. The European Union and Turkey helped in the search. State news agencies said Russia plans to send special aircraft and 50 professional mountain rescuers to the crash site. The White House said President Biden had been briefed on reports of the crash. Raisi was the second most powerful person in Iran's political structure after Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Khamenei has the ultimate say on foreign policy in Iran's nuclear program. He said there would be no disruption to state affairs. One analyst said Raisi was a lead contender to succeed the 85-year-old leader and that a ferocious power struggle may already be in the works.
I think President Raisi has more blood on his hands than any other official of the Islamic Republic. He has spent most of his life in the judiciary. In the 1980s, which was the bloodiest decade of the Islamic Republic, where thousands of dissidents were executed, Raisi was in the judiciary. Most importantly and infamously, in 1988, he was part of a 3 to 4% death panel that sent more than 3,000 political prisoners, if not more, to their deaths.
Leaders across the Middle East and beyond expressed condolences to Tehran, including from India, Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, Qatar, and Venezuela. Iran-backed terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis also sent condolences. Iranian law mandates the first vice president take the president's place in the case of his death, with the approval of Iran's leader. First Vice President Mohammad Mokhber would take the job if Khamenei approves. Iran's law also says an election must be held within 50 days of the vice president assuming the role. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And joining us now for more on this is Brent Sadler. He's a research fellow for naval warfare and advanced technology at the Center for National Defense. Good morning, Brent. Thank you so much for joining us to tell us more.
Yeah, good morning.
First, can you talk a little bit more about Raisi's role in Iran, especially aside the Ayatollah and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps?
Probably the best way to kind of describe it in American terms is he's kind of like the executive officer of a military organization, or the number two, like the COO. He's responsible for the day-to-day operations and functioning of government, but making strategic or policy decisions, changing direction of Iran, that's really for the Ayatollah.
I see. So operation-wise, he does have a lot of power. Now, the president and the top diplomat were on that plane. So what kind of difficulties does that pose now for the Iranian regime, especially at such an unstable time, with the foreign policies first, with the impact on, would it have an impact on the war, both when it comes to Gaza and also Iran's tensions with Israel right now?
No, absolutely. So the bottom line is no real change, because all of those operations are coordinated, managed, and executed through the IRGC. And so far, there's no indication that his loss has any impact on their influence or direct chain aligned to the Ayatollah Khamenei. And so no real change overseas. The foreign minister's death is an inconvenience more than it is a signal of any impact, because now the negotiations and any of the, most importantly with the Russians and the Chinese, is going to change who their interlocutor is. But again, inconvenience, but not a real hindrance to the regime. More importantly is the domestic unrest that is very likely.
Can you talk more about that, especially domestically?
No, absolutely. The last election for president where the position that Raisi was filling was the lowest turnouts in the regime's history, and is not well liked. This regime is increasingly under domestic pressure. In the lead up to the October 7th attacks of last year, there were numerous large protests, some of which were because of the really autocratic and very tough morality police that the regime has been instigating. Death of a young lady because she failed to wear hijab correctly, and a whole host of economic reasons that has really kind of weakened the regime's strength. And so with his loss, a figure who is attached with mass purges of the 80s, as your other guest had mentioned, but certainly not well liked, it's going to have to be replaced by someone who's even less liked by the Iranian people. And it's very likely, with elections mandated to occur within so many days, that they're not going to have enough time to put distance between his departure and perhaps a new, image of a new beginning or a new president.
Very interesting. So tell me more about what could happen now. Who could be the replacement?
Well, it's an open question, and it's not real clear who his replacement would be. Of course, the candidates have to be approved by the Ayatollah Khamenei, and it's not yet clear who he would probably pick. The most interesting, invisibility right now is there was rumored to be a competition for who the next Ayatollah would be, who's the supreme leader of Iran, between Khamenei's son, Moqtada, or Raisi. And now with Raisi dead, it leaves one person standing to take over the real leadership of Iran, with Khamenei's passing in the future.
So just one last thing before I let you go here. It might raise a lot of questions with, a helicopter with a president and a top diplomat, some high-level people crashing. What could be the way they would explain that? Could they also be pointing fingers? Would that strategically be of benefit for them?
Well, pointing the fingers at overseas forces, the Americans, or say the Israelis, those are favorites. And they wouldn't be surprised if they do that. But looking at the weather and the fact that they had news crews in there so quickly, I think they'll stick with the fact that pilot error and flying in as an act of God because of the weather, which is very likely, and quite frankly, surprised that the pilots would even allow taking off in the conditions that appear present at the time of the crash.
Got it. Thank you so much, Brent Sadler, for joining us this morning. I appreciate it.
I thank you.
And President Biden courting black voters in Georgia as he gave the commencement address at Morehouse College this weekend.
It comes as polling shows him losing support from the key voting group. NTD's Iris Tao has more from Atlanta.
And touting his agenda for the economy,
we're investing more money than ever in black families,
racial justice,
in America, we're all created equal,
and democracy.
To show you democracy, democracy, democracy.
President Biden capping its week of intensified outreach to black voters with a commencement address here at Morehouse College in Atlanta, a historically black university.
Congratulations, you are Morehouse men. God love you.
It comes as polls show Biden losing support among black and Hispanic voters over issues like inflation and the war in Gaza. Biden's also trailing behind Trump in major battleground states, including Georgia. But Biden brushing that off over the weekend.
So far, the polls have been right once. What I look at is actual election results.
Meanwhile, Trump also appealing to black voters.
You know, we're doing well with the black voter. They can't even believe it. They love Trump, and I love them.
Adding this at this weekend's NRA convention.
We have the highest poll numbers we've ever had.
And Biden's speech at Morehouse College also marks his most direct engagements with college students after protests broke out across college campuses nationwide over the war in Gaza. President Biden saying this to students while calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza.
What's happening in Gaza and Israel is heartbreaking. Hamas's vicious attack on Israel, killing innocent lives. I'm also working around the clock for more than just one ceasefire. I'm working to bring the region together.
The college's president said before that he would cancel the commencement on the spot if Biden's speech gets severely disrupted, which did not happen. In this coming week, President Biden will be traveling to New Hampshire and Boston while Trump plans a rally in New York City. And in just over 30 days, Biden and Trump will be holding their first debate in 4 years right here in Atlanta. Reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The National Rifle Association officially endorsed Trump over the weekend.
Trump took the stage at the annual NRA convention in Texas on Saturday. He said the Second Amendment is on the ballot and urged gun owners to vote.
And now to the Middle East and a look at the latest from the Israel-Hamas war. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other Israeli leaders on Sunday. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the visit and other developments in the region.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Netanyahu to discuss a U.S. plan for Saudi Arabia to recognize Israel. The oil-rich kingdom would also help the Palestinian Authority govern Gaza in exchange for a path to eventual statehood. Netanyahu opposes Palestinian statehood and has rejected those proposals. The Prime Minister says Israel will maintain open-ended security control over Gaza and partner with local Palestinians unaffiliated with Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. Sullivan was expected to press for Israel to go after Hamas terrorists in a targeted way and not to do a full-scale assault on Rafah. Israel believes that as much as a quarter of Hamas's fighting forces are holed up in the southern Gaza city. In hostage news, the Israeli military has recovered the body of another hostage in the Gaza Strip. Ron Benjamin went on a bicycle trip with his friends on October 7th before he was killed at an intersection during the Hamas terror attack. His body was then abducted by Hamas and taken to Gaza. On Friday, the IDF said the bodies of 3 other hostages were recovered from a Gaza tunnel. Those were Shani Lok, Amit Boskila, and Idshak Galernter. All 3 were abducted on October 7th and were killed while escaping the Nova Music Festival, and their bodies taken into Gaza. The IDF on Sunday released a video it got from the Gaza Strip of a former child hostage. It shows an 8-year-old girl who was kidnapped along with her 15-year-old sister on October 7th by Hamas terrorists. The girls were kidnapped from their home after their dad and his girlfriend were murdered by the terrorists. They were kept prisoner for 51 days and then released. According to IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari, the girl told the military that the Hamas terrorists forced her to read from a script, change her clothes, and refilm the scene over and over again. The IDF says 128 hostages are still in Gaza. Trucks carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza began moving ashore on Friday morning via a temporary pier built by the U.S. military. No U.S. troops went ashore in Gaza during the operation, according to CENTCOM. Meanwhile, some trouble could be brewing in the Netanyahu government. Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz demanded on Saturday that Netanyahu commit to an agreed war plan. The plan should include outlining who might rule the territory after the war with Hamas. Gantz says he wants a 6-point plan by June 8th. If he doesn't get it, he is threatening to withdraw his centrist party from Netanyahu's broadened emergency coalition. Gantz is a retired top Israeli general and Netanyahu's most formidable political rival, according to opinion polls. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Israel called for bipartisan support on Sunday from the United States against the establishment of a Palestinian state. It says such a state would be a reward for Hamas and its backer Iran.
European Union members, including Ireland, Spain, Slovenia, and Malta, have said they could recognize a Palestinian state this month.
Israel's foreign minister says Iran would use a Palestinian state as a base to work towards the destruction of Israel. And domestically, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik has delivered a speech before Israel's parliament.
The fourth highest ranked Republican in the House criticized President Biden's approach to the war in Gaza.
Speaking Sunday at a session dedicated to combating anti-Semitism worldwide, Stefanik vowed to help with crushing anti-Semitism at home. She also promised to help with getting Israel what it needs when it needs it, without conditions.
She was referring to Biden's decision to hold up the delivery of some 3,500 bombs of up to 2,000 pounds each, and his refusal to provide weapons for a major operation in Rafah.
The White House responded to Stefanik's criticisms, reaffirming Biden's unwavering support for the security of Israel. Spokesperson Andrew Bates said there has been no better friend than Israel than President Biden.
Coming up, music executive Sean Diddy Combs admits in a video to assaulting his ex-girlfriend after footage allegedly showing the incident surfaces.
Severe weather hits the Central Plains with at least 13 tornadoes reported, and Houston faces high temps and continuing power outages after last week's deadly storms.
Art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shin-Yun.
Did you know indoor air quality can be 5 to even 100 times worse than outdoors? Meet the Air Doctor. It's your answer for clean air and the only hospital-grade air purifier equipped with advanced Ultra HEPA filters, proven to improve your indoor air quality and overall health. Air Doctor circulates and triple filters the air in your room up to 5 times per hour. Say goodbye to pollen, smoke, mold spores, pet dander, even viruses, because the Ultra HEPA filter removes virtually 100% of dangerous contaminants down to 0.003 microns. That's 100 times smaller filtration than ordinary HEPA purifiers. This would have been in your lungs. Finally, get relief from allergies and asthma and reduce airborne disease.
It's pulling the pollutants out. It's even pulling the toxic chemicals that our cleaning products leave behind.
Call or go to tryair40.com now. Get 40% off our best-selling air purifier.
Call 1-800-876-0163. Call now.
Are you ready to help your family get prepared for the unexpected?
Everyone in? Here we go!
Ladybug and Cat Noir know how important it is to be ready. Because you never know when Hawkmoth is going to strike, or a disaster will hit.
Go, Rose!
And you don't need miraculous powers. Just put those planning skills you already have to good use. Know who to call, decide on a safe meeting location, and create an emergency preparedness kit. Make a plan that will help you and your family be ready when emergencies happen. Ready Kids can help.
I'm coming to save you!
Get started at ready.gov/kids.
My mother was always very familiar with her neighborhood, but one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. And she didn't know whether she should go forward or turn, and she wasn't even really sure where she was at. It was very unsettling for her.
I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, I don't want you to worry or be afraid. I'll be there for you, and we'll figure it out.
Good to have you back. Tornadoes and hail hit the Central Plains with more severe weather predicted.
And hundreds of thousands of Houston residents are still without power in the midst of near triple-digit temperatures. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the story.
At least 13 tornadoes were reported across Kansas, Colorado, and Oklahoma as of Sunday night. This includes one tornado that beat a path into Oklahoma City. Sunday night, areas in Kansas experienced winds between 80 to 100 miles per hour. The National Weather Service reported baseball-sized hail struck in Ellis, Kansas, and Morewood, Oklahoma. Hail over 2.5 inches in diameter was reported in at least 2 other Kansas cities. In Kansas, more than 50,000 homes and businesses were without power early Monday morning. Houston residents are still reeling in the aftermath of last week's storms that included severe thunderstorms, straight-line winds, and a tornado. The lengthy cleanup process is just beginning.
It's a brick building, and it knocked down. You can see the TVs kind of hanging on the side. Luckily, there's no explosion, because I'm about to go grab some of the propane in there.
Well, a lot of trees were down. The streets, the light poles were down, and it's very ugly. It's really very ugly downtown.
The widespread destruction brought much of Houston to a standstill. Crews raced to restore power and remove uprooted trees and debris. School districts in the Houston area canceled classes for over 400,000 students. Government offices were closed. Now Houston faces another potentially deadly problem: triple-digit heat, a smog warning, and hundreds of thousands still without power. People are coming together to help their neighbors get through this potential crisis.
It's very, very hot and humid, so everyone is sweating through the storm. But since the tornado level winds hit, we've all just been working together to take care of our neighbors as best we can.
That everyone is pretty resilient, and everyone's just trying to get back to normal and help each other out in the best way we can, because, you know, it's crazy.
Over 350,000 homes and businesses in Texas remained without electricity as of Sunday morning. Most of them are in the Houston area. A local Texas official says 90% of customers' power could be restored by Wednesday. CenterPoint Energy said 2,000 employees and over 5,000 contractors are working in the Houston area to restore power.
Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
On to politics. Here for an update on the presidential race is our contributor, Mike Leon. He's the host of the Can We Please Talk News Commentary podcast and the director of policy and strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Mike, really great to have you again. President Biden, he's at the Arthur M. Blank family office in Atlanta, shaking some hands, raising some money. He's reassuring black voters. Can he change the fact that they're withdrawing their support from him, or is he in an irreversible position based on his actions in the White House?
Hey, Kev, good to see you first and foremost, as always. Yeah, you know, this is a pivotal time right now for the Biden campaign, not the administration. Well, even though they go hand in hand. You know, he's down in Georgia. He obviously gave a commencement speech over at Morehouse College, and obviously he was visiting some voters over there in Atlanta. If you don't know who Arthur Blank is, the owner of the Falcons, who was obviously a supporter of the president, you know, he put on this fundraiser for him. There's a lot of folks in attendance, but I think right now, the Biden campaign has got a little bit of an issue, Kev, because if you look at national polling amongst Latinos and African-American voters, the polls are starting to trend in the opposite direction for the president. You know, about 76% back in 2020, and now all of a sudden it's around, 68%, and that means Trump is cutting into that margin with black voters, and especially younger black voters, which I know we're going to touch on in a sec, but like younger black voters and what is happening with the war with Israel and Gaza are really starting to lean in the direction of Trump, or at least being open and favorable to Trump. So I think the president is trying to go down to Atlanta. Look, he won Georgia by such a small margin. He's trying to go down there and say, look, I'm the administration to take us forward. It's a tough message to carry when you're 81 years old, right? And what we've seen the president do so far from a foreign policy perspective and economic perspective. But he's trying, and that's what this fundraiser was all about, that he was down there in Atlanta.
Well, Mike, and that New York Times Siena College poll shows that 20% of black voters in Georgia are now leaning towards Trump. So Biden was at the historically black Morehouse College in Atlanta, and some students turned their backs on the president during his speech. Is the resistance to Biden's handling of the war in Gaza the reason why he's losing support from those younger black voters?
Yeah, first off, at a high level, I hate when presidents, especially sitting members of Congress, presidents, give speeches. Rutgers, my alma mater, went through this in 2016 with Barack Obama giving the commencement speech there. Wasn't a fan of it. And Morehouse College students were well within their right to protest this. We did a focus group recently with a few African-American voters up in Indiana for our show that I was a part of. And a lot of them were telling me that they're not open to voting for, somebody that they feel like is committing genocide, right? Or at least lending to genocide with all the money that has gone towards Israel. And this was a direct shot at the Biden administration. And from those voters that I gathered, and, they had me on the show, asked the one question to younger voters, what would be your message to President Biden? And a lot of them were like, well, the message is going to be real simple. You're going to hear us in November. And so, remember, polling, Kev, right now is a snapshot in time. The president has a chance to maybe change that message, but his actions have not shown that he's changed that. And the focal point for these younger voters has really been the treatment of Palestinians, the peaceful ones that are not a part of this. They're not supporting Hamas, and that they're being viciously attacked. And I think this is going to come back home to roost, because there's no end in sight right now for what is happening in Gaza.
All right, so Mike, let's talk about Trump really quick. He's got a rally planned in the Bronx. Is it a good investment, New York?
Kev, you and I talked about this before. I don't get it, but I get the overall strategy, right? Because obviously, huge Democratic area, and obviously New York's a huge Democratic state. But the Bronx I'm from the Bronx. It's largely Latinos and African Americans. And so he's trying to go out there and make his message about the economy and, hey, I'm showing up for you. Joe Biden has not done any campaign stops in New York. And obviously the president is in New York because of the Manhattan trial. So I get the intention, because nationally he's trying to win over Latino and African-American voters. And there's no better place to go than the Bronx, which is a melting pot for that. But overall, we'll see if it plays out. But the president has been very vocal that they're making a play for New York come November.
Very interesting. Our contributor, Mike Leon, Director of Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Kev.
And it's a big day for Taiwan as its new president, Lai Ching-te, also known as William Lai, assumes office today.
This comes amid high tensions. Taiwan has faced pressure from the Chinese regime, including regular Air Force and Navy activity near the island since the election in January.
Taiwan President William Lai asked China on Monday to stop its military and political threats during his inauguration speech. He says peace is the only choice, and that Beijing had to respect the choice of the Taiwanese people. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo attended the ceremony, while the Biden administration sent a group of former officials to observe the event, marking bipartisan U.S. support for Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party views Taiwan as part of its territory, despite never having ruled the island. It has threatened to take control of Taiwan by force if necessary. Taiwan is one of America's major allies in the region, and among those pushing back against Beijing. William Lai is Taiwan's former vice president. He has evolved his position from a supporter of Taiwan's independence to advocating for maintaining the status quo and possible talks with Beijing. Lai received congratulations from politicians and delegations from 12 nations that maintain official diplomatic relations with Taiwan, as well as politicians from the US, Japan, and European countries. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken congratulated Lai, expressing the desire to work together to advance shared interests, deepen the unofficial relationship, and uphold peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. Lai intends to continue his predecessor's efforts in maintaining stability with China, enhancing Taiwan's security through military imports, expanding the defense industry, and strengthening partnerships with unofficial allies like the U.S., Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Oil prices climbed today after Iran's president died in a helicopter crash.
And China is placing some U.S. companies on an unreliable entities list. More on which companies and consequences. A federal judge blocked the Biden administration's expansion of gun restrictions. Some Texas gun dealers will be spared background check requirements for now.
How's New York City retail after the pandemic? It has some ups and downs. We hear from an author and consultant about how stores can adapt to dry foot traffic and new trends helping to lower the vacancy rate.
Presenting the heritage of traditional Chinese martial arts, fostering martial ethics, and reviving the true tradition. Preliminaries of the 2024 NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition will be held across Germany, Taiwan, and New York. The grand finals will be broadcast live online worldwide in September 2024. For more information, please call 1-888-477-9228.
Do you know that Cars for Compassion is the best way to donate your car? Through this non-profit program, you can not only help us keep bringing the world independent and daringly truthful journalism, but also significantly impact the life of somebody who needs a vehicle. The Epoch Times fights misinformation and big tech censorship by being independent and unbound to advertisers. Every single contribution to Cars for Compassion is a powerful endorsement of our unwavering mission. All you have to do is go to carsforcompassion.org and let us know about your car, and we'll schedule a pickup time and email you a tax-deductible receipt. To do this, just click the link below. Support truth, compassion, and hope. Donate your car right now at www.carsforcompassion.org.
There's a whirlwind of emotion and activity going on in this painting. And there's chaos all around and threat from below. The wolves surrounding her, and they're anything but unmoved. They're moving all the time, and we sense that. But this little girl remains unmoved.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Welcome back.
We're starting with the latest business and finance headlines right now.
Oil prices climbed today amid political uncertainty in major oil-producing countries. This after Iran's president died in a helicopter crash, and Saudi Arabia's crown prince cited issues with the king's health. Saudi Arabia's state news said yesterday 88-year-old King Salman will undergo treatment for lung inflammation. OPEC and its allies, called OPEC Plus, will meet on June 1st to discuss oil market matters.
China's Commerce Ministry said today it will prohibit some U.S. firms from importing and exporting activities related to China. This includes General Atomics Aeronautical System, who China says sold arms to Taiwan. According to Chinese state media, Boeing Defense, Space and Security was also placed on an unreliable entities list. The ban forbids the firms from making new investments in China. Senior executives of the companies are prohibited from entering China, and their work permits will be revoked, along with visitor and residential status.
And gun dealers will not be subject to the Biden administration's new restrictions for now.
A federal judge blocked the rule that would require gun dealers to obtain licenses and conduct background checks when selling firearms at gun shows and online.
The judge temporarily restrained the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives rule from being enforced in Texas or against members of several gun rights groups.
The judge argued those who buy and sell guns for personal protection ought to have the same exemptions as people who buy and sell guns for personal collections.
His order remains in effect until June 2nd, pending further litigation.
Texas AG Ken Paxton said he's relieved the, quote, illegal rule will not take effect. The U.S. Justice Department, which is defending the rule in court, did not yet comment. A decisive vote against the United Auto Workers at 2 Mercedes factories in Alabama. The failure sidetracked the union's grand plan to sign up workers at non-union plants, mainly in the South.
This isn't a failure. This isn't fatal. This is a bump in the road. We've been here before, and we're going to continue on. We're going to win.
You know, it didn't break the way we wanted it to. But at the end of the day, we've all got to go back in there, and we got to work together.
Employees at Mercedes battery and assembly plants near Tuscaloosa voted 56% against the union. The vote count handed the union a serious setback. This a month after the UAW scored a breakthrough victory at Volkswagen's 4,300 worker factory in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But newly elected President Shawn Fain said the union will return to Mercedes and will press on with their efforts. They aim to organize about 150,000 workers at more than a dozen auto factories across the nation. All right, it's time for a checkup on the resiliency of retail in the Big Apple. If you walk down 34th Street, you see it's just bustling. But the story's a little more than that as the city recovers from the pandemic.
Some small business owners are saying rent is sky high, but they've been able to adapt by opening what are called micro retail shops. And yet crime is still an issue, with the city launching a program to have businesses share their security footage with the NYPD in real time.
I went out to investigate what challenges retailers in New York City are facing and what successes they're having. Take a look. It's a mixed bag for retail in New York City right now, with places like the Flatiron District seeing the departure of big box stores, said to be due to spiking crime and the difficult post-pandemic retail real estate market. On the other hand, places like Nolita are seeing an influx of these smaller scale international retailers because it's a trendy area. And right now, I'm in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, in front of one of the T-Mobile stores that survived after the company shut down 62 of its locations in New York City last year. That's over a quarter of them. We're going to learn more about the retail landscape in the Big Apple from Paco Underhill, the CEO of Pekshi LLC.
Recognize that retail historically is about life and death. Okay? Birth, life, and death. Okay? And part of what we've watched is a number of firms in the post-ban world suffer because who are they answerable to? Are they answerable to Wall Street, or are they answerable to the changing consumer?
And the State of the Chains report shows that New York City lost 3% of its chain stores last year. What is driving that trend?
Well, part of what we're looking at, first of all, is just a changing market and some of the struggles that the national chains have had getting local. I can remember doing a test for a grocery store chain, and they sent us to a market in El Paso, and there was a dearth of things for a Mexican-American market. I can remember going to Southwest Washington for a drugstore chain where the store had 80% Afro-Americans, and yet there were more than 500 things in the store for blondes. Part of what we're looking at is how do we as a retail culture get better about getting local?
We're seeing T-Mobile take a huge hit here. Pharmacies like Rite Aid closing a lot of stores in New York City. Is there a way for these type of retailers to attract more people into those brick and mortar stores?
Well, some of it is how do we understand what the role of the store is? If I'm a drugstore, I am trying to get people to shop online. I'm trying to get people to log into pharmacy. The role of the store is in the 21st century is very different than it was in the 20th century. And that evolution is something that some people are doing a lot better than others.
And there is some good news amidst all this too, that the vacancy rate in Manhattan is dropping over the last year. Is that something that's a result of just breathing now after the pandemic is being further in the rear view?
I think there's a much more important issue that is dealing with vacancy levels. Historically, the realty market was about the biggest rent for the longest period of time. That's what happened here in the US. And now part of what we're watching, I have a brother-in-law who works for a Middle Eastern fashion company that's opening their first store in New York in Soho. But what they're looking at is not a 20-year lease, but it's a 5-year lease. It's something where I'm going to go in and see how I work and see whether this is the place for me. We also see here on Bleecker Street, the prevalence of pop-ups, which is where someone can come in and sign a 6 months lease, go and test something out.
A concerned citizen spoke with us.
You can order everything online. So it's really, really sad. I don't know what makes cities survive in the future, how retail survives in the future. We have to maybe restructure the economy and create smaller loops where people shop locally from local makers.
Up next, the U.S. will start pulling its troops out of Niger. The two countries came to an agreement nearly a year after a military coup.
And a new warrant issued by the International Criminal Court seeking arrests of Israeli Prime Minister and Hamas leader. That and more coming up.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth. Without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
Of course.
Yes. Have you ever asked for help yourself?
It's always tough, right?
I always feel like I can solve my own problems, but eventually, you just can't deal with it on your own.
And you start to question, maybe people would be better off without me. When you realize that you're not alone, once you take that first step, there's so much support.
Welcome back. Some breaking news coming in. The International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants for Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity over the October 7th terror attacks on Israel. The Pentagon says the U.S. military is pulling out of Niger by mid-September. The two countries reached an agreement, officials said in a joint statement yesterday. Niger's ruling junta last month told the U.S. to withdraw its nearly 1,000 military personnel from the country. Niger had been a key partner in the fight against insurgents in West Africa until a coup last year. The agreement comes after a 5-day meeting between Niger's defense ministry and the U.S. State Department. In March, senior U.S. officials raised concerns about issues such as the expected arrival of Russian forces and reports of Iran prospecting for uranium in the country.
And a surprising announcement from Microsoft to its China-based employees. They should consider relocating abroad. What's behind the suggestion? NTD's Business Matters host Don Ma has the details.
Microsoft is reportedly asking some of its China-based staff to consider transferring outside the country. This is according to a Wall Street Journal report as well as Reuters. This comes as U.S.-China relations are strained amid a race for cutting-edge technology. Washington has been trying to limit Beijing's access to advanced chips used in AI applications. There are concerns that the technology can be used to strengthen China's military. Microsoft is asking about 700 to 800 people who are involved in machine learning and other computing-related work to consider relocating. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. The employees are mostly engineers of Chinese nationality, and they were recently offered an option to transfer to the U.S., Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand. NTD, though, could not independently verify those details.
After a nearly 2-year pause, space company Blue Origin launched a crew of people from a site in Texas to the edge of space.
The event yesterday marks a new beginning for its centerpiece space tourism business.
The New Shepard's crew included Ed Dwight, an astronaut candidate picked by former President John Kennedy in 1961. He trained as an astronaut but never flew to space. He's now 90 and the oldest person to reach such heights. All passengers, including a venture capitalist and a pilot, are paying customers of Blue Origin's space tourism business.
Mr. Dwight's seat was sponsored by a private foundation and a nonprofit group. Blue Origin hasn't disclosed how much it charges customers. The grounding of the New Shepard rocket in 2022 came after a mid-flight failure during an unmanned research mission. A structural failure in the rocket's engine nozzle forced the capsule, full of science experiments, to abort.
And next, we bring in analysis on the arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court and the death of Iran's leader, coming up.
The highest art is beautiful, breathtaking, timeless, and moving. Experience art with 5,000 years of history, inspired by the divine. Experience Shin-Yun.
بیست و سه سال 16 سال عمري ما هفت
همه داعش کردیان برانبر خشک و دایکانی ازدی ما کاری که دور لهمو چمک دموکراسی و موافقانی مرو و انسانیت او بارو خی که است های به تایبت ایران خوشبوریا بشه که دگره تا با حالانه که اداره اوباما کرد
ریم بو او هفت روز بو و داعش از کرد
تامبوم كرا قوتينيز قريا بما متشكر بهر بيدن نبو باوان رحم نبو
قدامنا سؤالان من خادران نزل باوان نفستم بس ما قبس ناش بجوش باش.
They would literally be auctioned in front of soldiers, and then the soldiers begin to bid.
زارو بان همو جيبرن تي حملي زارو يدم واسسي بان همو جيبرن
وحشیگریه که توا عیاره ظلمی که یک جار زور گوره لما افرطانه کرا و تعدایی که زور زوریان لیده که همانه روزانه دست فروشیده.
Imagine being a child, having a child mentality, and these evil people come and wheel you away from the only safety you've ever known.
You know you don't have to wear your PT gear anymore, right?
It's comfortable.
So how's civilian life treating you?
It's fine.
When I got out, I didn't want to admit that there was anything wrong because it felt like a failure. And then I realized, like, there's nothing to be ashamed of. So I started talking to someone. Maybe you are fine, but if you're not, it's okay.
Thank you.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Welcome back. Joining us now for more on the arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court and the death of Iran's leader, this president that is Fleur Hassan-Nahum, Israel's special foreign ministry envoy and outgoing deputy mayor of Jerusalem. Ms. Nahum, thank you so much for your time this morning. The ICC prosecutor is seeking arrest warrants for Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas head, for things like extermination, murder, and it goes into a lot of these things about how they're treating these captives very poorly. Why not how he's using civilians as a shield? That's also a war crime.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this is the least of the problems of this arrest warrant. The main problem is, of course, that they're comparing the leader that permanently killed, raped women, and they're comparing him to the elected prime minister of the state of Israel, elected multiple times in a democracy. And the other thing that's wrong with it is the fact that the same court, or the court related to it, hasn't found any plausible reason to say that there's a genocide going on here. So it doesn't really connect.
I understand, Fleur, and the ICC prosecutor wants to arrest Netanyahu for things like starvation, murder, not murder, attacks on civilian population. That is something that's obviously happening because Hamas is hiding behind civilians. What is supposed to be done in that case?
Well, first of all, starvation is a complete libel because Israel has let in and facilitated in the last few months about 500,000 tons of food, more food than they were getting in before October 7th. So that's already a calumny. If Hamas are the people distributing that food and the food is not getting to the people that need to eat, that's not Israel's fault. That's Hamas's fault, who are purposefully denying their people of all of the aid that all the countries, including the United States, are sending. And so that's the first thing. Secondly, of course, as you mentioned quite rightly, Hamas uses its population as a human shield, which by international law is a war crime. And so Hamas have got many, many war crimes, and they're really trying hard, trying to scrape the barrel and seeing how they can equivalate Bibi Netanyahu, the Democratic Prime Minister of the State of Israel, to an arch-terrorist, Sinwar.
Fleur, let's move on to the death of Iran's president, Ibrahim Raisi. He's now a person who is behind the attack on Israel with that drone strike and the missile strike there. So how is his death going to first affect the Middle East as a whole, the region?
Well, I wish I could say that this is the end of an era and that the end of Raisi and the foreign minister is the end of the evil dictatorship and Islamic fundamentalist jihadi wall is making their own people miserable, Iranian people miserable. Unfortunately, the supreme leader, Khamenei, is still in charge, and he is going to be picking somebody else now to do that work for him. And so whilst I think it will create chaos and insecurity in the country, I don't think, unfortunately, it's the end of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which is really what the whole world should be working towards.
And how will Raisi's death affect the tensions between Iran and Israel?
Again, I think it'll be a temporary pause because they have to get their own house in order. But these people, they've made it part of their foreign policy to destroy the state of Israel. They make no bounds about the fact that they want our destruction. 3 weeks ago, they fired 350 rockets and missiles, including ballistic missiles. We had a coalition led by the United States to try and protect Israel. But just because Israel wasn't damaged doesn't mean that they didn't have the intention to destroy Israel. That was exactly their intention. And unfortunately, I don't think the death of Raisi is the end of that dream for them.
And we will keep in mind that Raisi was in charge of enriching this uranium, closest ever to weapons grade. Fleur Hassan Nahum, Israel's Special Foreign Ministry envoy and former deputy mayor of Jerusalem, co-founder of UAE Israel Business Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to move on here. It was a very, very interesting interview with
Definitely,
Nahum.
and we're so glad that she was able to come on. We'll keep that in mind, but we will head to a quick break now, and we'll be right back.
NTD News, the fastest growing independent news source in America, bringing you breaking news from around the world. Expert analysis, investigative reporting, and original, award-winning documentaries. We're known for our uncensored China coverage you won't find anywhere else. We cover the stories that affect you and shape our world without the political noise. We report from the heart with you in mind. Watch us right here on NTD News.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Here are today's top stories. Iran's president and foreign minister reportedly killed in a helicopter crash. A frantic overnight search in blizzard conditions ends with no survivors.
Iran says rescue teams were transporting bodies away from the wreckage today. State media says the crash killed 9 people in total.
President Biden venturing onto a college campus after months of nationwide protests. What Biden told graduates at Morehouse College as he's losing support among black voters.
National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan in Israel to press for restraint in Rafah, a plan to have Saudi Arabia help govern Gaza, the latest from the Israel-Hamas war.
New Taiwanese President William Lai asking China to stop its military and political threats, this during his inauguration speech today.
A comet fragment lights up the sky over parts of Spain and Portugal. See the stunning colors for yourself.
A 99-year-old UK World War II pilot goes on one last mission in the iconic bomber he flew decades ago. Hear his story and his reflections.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters, here are Evelyn Lee and Kevin Hogan.
Welcome to NTD.
Good morning. Today is Monday, May 20th, and today's top news. Iranian state media says Iran's president and foreign minister are dead after a helicopter crash.
Rescue crews found the wreckage early today after an overnight search in blizzard conditions.
Iranian officials say the helicopter ran into heavy fog and went down near Azerbaijan.
The Iranian Red Crescent says search and rescue efforts have now ended, with teams transporting the bodies.
The Iranian regime expressed condolences, saying there will not be the slightest disturbance in the wake of the crash.
Keep in mind that Iran's supreme leader has more power than the country's president. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on what we know so far about the crash.
9 people, including Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi and his foreign minister, were in a helicopter that crashed in northwest Iran on Sunday. Iran's state media says the deadly crash happened after a dam opening ceremony on the border with Azerbaijan. State TV said images from the crash site showed the helicopter hit a mountain peak, but there was no official word on the cause of the crash. The Iranian Red Crescent says crews were transporting bodies to the city of Tabriz. Analysts say it was a U.S.-made helicopter from the late 1960s that went down. The European Union and Turkey helped in the search. State news agencies said Russia plans to send special aircraft and 50 professional mountain rescuers to the crash site. The White House said President Biden had been briefed on reports of the crash. Raisi was the second most powerful person in Iran's political structure after Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Khamenei has the ultimate say on foreign policy in Iran's nuclear program. He said there would be no disruption to state affairs. One analyst said Raisi was a lead contender to succeed the 85-year-old leader and that a ferocious power struggle may already be in the works.
I think President Raisi has more blood on his hands than any other official of the Islamic Republic. He has spent most of his life in the judiciary in the 1980s, which was the bloodiest decade of the Islamic Republic, where thousands of dissidents were executed. Raisi was in the judiciary. Most importantly and infamously, in 1988, he was part of a 3 to 4% death panel that sent more than 3,000 political prisoners, if not more, to their deaths.
Leaders across the Middle East and beyond expressed condolences to Tehran, including from India, Iraq, Syria, Pakistan, Qatar, and Venezuela. Iran-backed terrorist organizations like Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis also sent condolences. Iranian law mandates the first vice president take the president's place in the case of his death, with the approval of Iran's leader. First Vice President Mohammad Mokhber would take the job if Khamenei approves. Iran's law also says an election must be held within 50 days of the vice president assuming the role. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
And also, Justin, the International Criminal Court is seeking arrest warrants for Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's on charges of war crimes and crimes against humanity over the October 7th terror attacks on Israel.
President Biden courting black voters, a switch of gears now in Georgia, as he gave the commencement address at Morehouse College this weekend.
It comes as polling shows him losing support from the key voting group. NTD's Iris Tao has more from Atlanta.
And touting his agenda for the economy.
We're investing more money than ever in black families.
Racial justice.
In America, we're all created equal.
And democracy.
To show you democracy, democracy, democracy.
President Biden capping his week of intensified outreach to black voters with a commencement address here at Morehouse College in Atlanta, a historically black university.
Congratulations, you are Morehouse men. God love you.
It comes as polls show Biden losing support among black and Hispanic voters over issues like inflation and the war in Gaza. Biden's also trailing behind Trump in major battleground states, including Georgia. But Biden brushing that off over the weekend.
So far, the polls have been right once. What I look at is actual election results.
Meanwhile, Trump also appealing to black voters.
You know, we're doing well with the black voter. They can't even believe it. They love Trump, and I love them.
Adding this at this weekend's NRA convention.
We have the highest poll numbers we've ever had.
And Biden's speech at Morehouse College also marks his most direct engagements with college students after protests broke out across college campuses nationwide over the war in Gaza. President Biden saying this to students while calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza.
What's happening in Gaza and Israel is heartbreaking. Hamas's vicious attack on Israel, killing innocent lives. I'm also working around the clock for more than just one ceasefire. I'm working to bring the region together.
The college's president said before that he would cancel the commencement on the spot if Biden's speech gets severely disrupted, which did not happen. In this coming week, President Biden will be traveling to New Hampshire and Boston while Trump plans a rally in New York City. And in just over 30 days, Biden and Trump will be holding their first debate in 4 years right here in Atlanta. Reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The National Rifle Association officially endorsed Trump over the weekend.
Trump took the stage at the annual NRA convention in Texas on Saturday. He said the Second Amendment is on the ballot and urged gun owners to vote. Now let's delve into what to expect this week at former President Trump's New York hush money trial with Paul Kamenar, the lead counsel at the National Legal and Policy Center. It's good to have you back on with us, Paul. What do we expect to see this week at the trial?
Well, we probably could expect to see Michael Cohen lying on the stand again. Today, Trump's attorney will finish his cross-examination, and then the prosecutor will have an opportunity to what's called redirect, ask Michael Cohen to clean up some of the lies that he told the other day about whether he talked to Donald Trump. And then the Trump team will have an opportunity to present their case. The judge will then have closing arguments, and it will probably go to the jury by, if not by tomorrow, by Thursday, which is the last day of the trial. There's only three days this week. Today, tomorrow, and Thursday. They have Friday off because of the upcoming holiday. And then we'll know the verdict next week.
Paul, I want to toss an inference from an MSNBC headline at you. They're saying that Cohen's past lies make him more credible because he lied to protect his client. What do you make of this?
It's ridiculous. So, is he lying then? Is he lying now? The point is that he lied on the stand, but the point is that the prosecutor hasn't really prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. So I think Michael Cohen is a discredited witness. The jury sees that. They saw that the other day when he said he called Trump to tell him that the Stormy Daniels payment was made. And then we have text messages saying, no, you were calling Trump's security person and talking about some 14-year-old girl who was harassing you on telephones. You know, it's ridiculous.
Okay, Paul, there has not been any witnesses called by the defense. Do they need to?
Well, no, they don't need to. They haven't had an opportunity to call the defense. They will today after the government does a redirect examination. So I do expect that they may call at least one witness, and that is the former chairman of the Federal Election Commission, Bradley Smith, who I know, who will testify that there was no crime here, that there was no there for an election law violation. Now, Judge Merchan has said in pretrial that he's going to limit this witness's testimony, so we'll see how that plays out. So that's one witness. And Trump, of course, has the right to testify. He said earlier he would like to testify, but I don't think he will because the prosecution will have him on the stand for several days on cross-examination, going after him about the E. Jean Carroll case, about the civil tax fraud case. And so his best bet is not to testify.
But Paul, if this FEC chair says that there's no crime, that's unnecessary, right? Because the prosecution has to show that there was only an intent to commit a crime.
Well, that's true. That you show intent to commit a crime, but the question is, what's the crime? And therefore, it's not a crime for Donald Trump to give unlimited amounts of money to his own campaign, whether it's hush money payment or whatever. So there's just no crime there. They can't just invent that. They don't have to prove that that crime was committed, but they have to at least prove that there is a crime. And this is what this expert will show, that this whole case is basically built on a house of cards.
Just 20 seconds here, Paul. Is there any evidence that the defense is expected to present?
Well, the evidence, like I said, is probably the expert from the FEC expert, but they don't have to do it. They will ask the court, hey, we don't have to put on any case. We want a directed verdict of not guilty. Then it'll go to the jury. But I expect Trump, if not, won't be found guilty. I think at a minimum, we'll have a hung jury here.
Understood. Paul Kamenar, lead counsel at the National Legal and Policy Center. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said the Senate would once again try to pass a controversial border security bill. The bipartisan bill failed to pass earlier this year after Republicans withdrew their support. The Democratic leader said the Border Act would change asylum laws, hire thousands of border agents, and seek to curtail fentanyl smuggling. The previous bill was tied to foreign aid for Ukraine and Israel, but Schumer said this bill would stand alone. Record numbers of illegal border crossers have been caught since President Biden took office. Border security has become one of the leading issues in the presidential campaign.
Pro-Gaza protests continued in the U.S. over the weekend. Police at the University of Pennsylvania arrested 6 students in a group of 19 protesters on Saturday. UPenn police say the group was trying to occupy a school building. This comes a week after authorities broke up a protest encampment on campus and arrested 9 students. In New York, police detained several people holding torches at a protest in Brooklyn. Officials estimated around 200 people participated in the pro-Gaza demonstration. Police arrested close to 3,000 people on U.S. campuses over the past month. In Gaza yesterday, a ship dropped off humanitarian aid at a pier built by the U.S. military. Humanitarian agencies welcomed the aid coming through the new pier, but said it isn't enough to meet civilian needs. And over in Taiwan, it is a big day for Taiwan as its new president, Lai Ching-te, also known as William Lai, assumes office today.
This comes amid high tensions. Taiwan has faced pressure from the Chinese regime, including regular Air Force and Navy activity near the island since the election in January.
Taiwan President William Lai asked China on Monday to stop its military and political threats during his inauguration speech. He says peace is the only choice, and that Beijing had to respect the choice of the Taiwanese people. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo attended the ceremony, while the Biden administration sent a group of former officials to observe the event, marking bipartisan U.S. support for Taiwan. The Chinese Communist Party views Taiwan as part of its territory, despite never having ruled the island. It has threatened to take control of Taiwan by force if necessary. Taiwan is one of America's major allies in the region, and among those pushing back against Beijing. William Lai is Taiwan's former vice president. He has evolved his position from a supporter of Taiwan's independence to advocating for maintaining the status quo and possible talks with Beijing. Lai received congratulations from politicians and delegations from 12 nations that maintain official diplomatic relations with Taiwan, as well as politicians from the US, Japan, and European countries. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken congratulated Lai, expressing the desire to work together to advance shared interests, deepen the unofficial relationship, and uphold peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. Lai intends to continue his predecessor's efforts in maintaining stability with China, enhancing Taiwan's security through military imports, expanding the defense industry, and strengthening partnerships with unofficial allies like the U.S., Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Up next, after days of grueling competition, winners of the prestigious Barbecue Championship in Memphis were crowned this weekend.
And a Comet fragment lights up the sky over parts of Spain and Portugal. See the stunning colors for yourself.
A 99-year-old World War II pilot goes on one last mission in the iconic bomber he flew decades ago. Hear his story and his thoughts about the ride when we come back.
I am so glad you ladies are here. You each have your own rooms. Thank you. Get settled in. I'll call you for dinner. Adopting teen sisters, it's a lot. Girls, you're gonna be late. You want breakfast? No thanks, we're good. They're always in their own world. What'd you get there? Twice the work. Twice the surprises. Just try it. Good. But if you think of it that way, they're also twice as fulfilling. I think you should ask her yourself.
Is it okay to call you Mom?
Of course you can.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere. And just growing up the way I grew up, and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.
Good to have you back for some weather news. Tornadoes and hail hit the Central Plains, with more severe weather predicted.
And hundreds of thousands of Houston residents are still without power in the midst of near triple-digit temperatures. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the story.
At least 13 tornadoes were reported across Kansas, Colorado, and Oklahoma as of Sunday night. This includes one tornado that beat a path into Oklahoma City. Sunday night, areas in Kansas experienced winds between 80 to 100 miles per hour. The National Weather Service reported baseball-sized hail struck in Ellis, Kansas, and Morewood, Oklahoma. Hail over 2.5 inches in diameter was reported in at least 2 other Kansas cities. In Kansas, more than 50,000 homes and businesses were without power early Monday morning. Houston residents are still reeling in the aftermath of last week's storms that included severe thunderstorms, straight-line winds, and a tornado. The lengthy cleanup process is just beginning.
It's a brick building, and it knocked down. You can see the TVs kind of hanging on the side. Luckily, there's no explosion, because I'm about to go grab some of the propane in there.
Well, a lot of trees were down. The streets, the light poles were down, and it's very ugly. It's really very ugly downtown.
The widespread destruction brought much of Houston to a standstill. Crews raced to restore power and remove uprooted trees and debris. School districts in the Houston area canceled classes for over 400,000 students. Government offices were closed. Now Houston faces another potentially deadly problem: triple-digit heat, a smog warning, and hundreds of thousands still without power. People are coming together to help their neighbors get through this potential crisis.
It's very, very hot and humid, so everyone is sweating through the storm. But since the tornado level winds hit, we've all just been working together to take care of our neighbors as best we can.
That everyone is pretty resilient, and everyone's just trying to get back to normal and help each other out in the best way we can, because, you know, it's crazy.
Over 350,000 homes and businesses in Texas remained without electricity as of Sunday morning. Most of them are in the Houston area. A local Texas official says 90% of customers' power could be restored by Wednesday. CenterPoint Energy said 2,000 employees and over 5,000 contractors are working in the Houston area to restore power. Looking ahead, the Storm Prediction Center says the Central Plains could see more severe storms Monday into the overnight hours. Those threats have now been expanded to the Great Lakes region, at least through tomorrow. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And over to Tennessee, hundreds of pit masters were sweating through the smoke to be crowned best in pork at this year's World Championship Barbecue Cooking Contest in Memphis.
It's one of the top cooking contests in the U.S. Teams from around the world spend days working on huge whole hogs, massive slabs of shoulder and cuts of ribs.
And over $150,000 in prizes were awarded. 129 cooking teams from 22 states and 4 foreign countries competed in one of 3 main categories of ribs, shoulder, and whole hog. The prizes were awarded Saturday after a grueling multi-day contest that started last Wednesday.
This year's winners were Heath Riles' barbecue team in the rib category. Big Bob Gibson Barbecue won the shoulder category. First place in the whole hog category was taken by the Shed Barbecue.
And we're moving on. A dazzling display over parts of Spain and Portugal. A bright comet fragment lit up the skies on Saturday night.
The European Space Agency shared a video captured by its Fireball camera of what it described as a stunning meteor.
But it later said it appeared to be a small piece of a comet and not a meteor. It flew over Spain and Portugal at 28 miles per second before burning up over the Atlantic.
Videos shot in several cities and towns went viral on social media. They showed the object crossing the night sky and illuminating it with bright tones of blue and green. Really is a great spectacle, but you gotta be careful. There was one of those comets in 2013 that blew up over Russia, and it had like about 500,000 tons of TNT equivalent, and it injured 1,200 people. So you gotta be careful.
Wow, yeah, but it does look like a great spectacle. I mean, look at this. The footage looks like it just lights up the night sky, and it looks almost like day.
Yeah, we've seen really cool stuff lately, like the eclipses, and now this dazzling display with this comet.
That's awesome. Well, and we have another story for you before we wrap up here. A 99-year-old World War II veteran rides in an aircraft. He flew regularly as a young man.
Ray Park climbed aboard UK's iconic Lancaster bomber for one final mission. Let's take a look.
The Lancaster bomber is one of the most famous aircrafts of World War II. Now there are only 2 airworthy Lancaster bombers left in the world, and this one is likely to be the last to carry a veteran. 99-year-old Ray Park was a Royal Air Force flight engineer during World War II. He sat in the cockpit next to the pilot on 40 missions. This was all before he turned 20. The ride gave him a chance to reflect on his memories and the passage of time.
Well, it's all memories. I've gone from my first flight when I was nearly 18 to my last one, I'm nearly 100.
For the pilot who took Park on his final mission, it was also an unforgettable experience.
I've never taken a Lancaster veteran on the Lancaster, so today was a first for me. For me to be his pilot it's just an honor. It's fantastic.
While Mr. Park enjoyed the experience, one aspect of the trip didn't meet his expectations.
It was the most uncomfortable ride I've ever had in Lancaster. I expected to be going up in the air.
Lancasters were often used in nighttime bombing raids and carried the heaviest bombs ever dropped in World War II. The Lancaster bomber had a crew of 7. Mr. Park was the second pilot, also called flight engineer, on his many missions. Rides on the ground like the one Mr. Park took helped to pay for restoration work. The goal is to get this iconic plane back in the sky once more. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Gotta honor those heroes.
Yeah, and definitely iconic plane too.
Yeah, and that Lancaster bomber was really instrumental in keeping the Nazis at bay and keeping England safe.
Right. Must have been a great experience for him one last time. It must have been connected to so many memories and just pride.
Yes.
Happy for him. All right, and we're wrapping up our show right here, but be sure to stay tuned to NTD's News Today broadcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. That's coming up.
And for round-the-clock original news coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app.
That's right. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.